We are leaving the land of Ikshitaka here in Let's Remember Skies of Arcadia. We are moving into North Ocean. There are some discoveries here. I don't know if I'll actually find them. I'll just sort of jam on the button as I go. There's one sort of right between here, but you have to be at the right... there it is. Okay, cool. So, the mysterious rings. And then later on, there's... So actually, that's a pretty big area to grab it by, so that's not too bad. There's another discovery called the Will-O-Wisp that I would really like to find as well, sort of on my way to our next destination. We're heading to Valua to get the yellow moon crystal. Back to Valua, you say? After we've gone and dealt with everything earlier in the game, that seems very dangerous, and, well, you'd be right. Let me run here. Or not. I should have equipped my party. And I didn't, which is a bit of a mistake. Aika got a new boomerang in the last segment. And I wish we had some sacrum crystals, to be honest. But for now, we'll fight through the battle, beat the beasties, and get to where we need to go. I will also want to change people's elemental affinities, because there is a boss fight coming up that I actually know the elemental affinities for, because I know the general strengths and weaknesses of fire, or of the red moonstone, and so I need to switch it out, because all of the enemies we encounter will use red. And they can hit pretty hard, so we want to mitigate their damage as much as they can, as we can. It's a decent system to sort of deal with. In general, actually I can change them here. So Fina I want red, Visa I want blue. Aika can stay purple. And just to increase our magic gain, Drachma will go back to blue. Blue and purple being the ones that are somewhat effective against red. If you're attacking with something that has an advantage, I believe you get your attacks do 120% damage. If you're doing something that has a weakness, it's 70% damage. I know that for a fact. If you're attacking equal, there's no change. And then there are some that are like... The 70 is like if you're at a severe disadvantage. There are some that are only like at slight advantages or greater advantages. So I think a slight disadvantage gives you 90% out of the potential damage you can do. I don't profess to be any sort of expert on the system. And there's a value in ship that we want to generally avoid. We'll just go underneath it. And we'll encounter our sort of next challenge. And this is going to be an interesting encounter. This whole segment is full of a lot of stuff, and it's going to culminate in a part of the playthrough that will be a little slower, that I haven't, like, pre-planned my words for, but it is something that I want to talk about. There's a lot of things that have been on my mind lately, the least of which being cultural cynicism, and now with the announcement today with the ESA being as much assholes about cultural preservation, I'm thinking wistfully about things that we are losing or that might be lost. So I have some thoughts, and there will be a good time for me to sort of talk about them. This is Gordo. Gordo is a black pirate, very large, enjoys life. I like his design, I like his mustache. It's not going to be a ship battle, though. He has a very cool ship, sort of this metal... I guess sort of this metal sharky fish thing. And so he doesn't attack ships with his cannons because he's afraid he'll I couldn't get through the sentence. He's afraid that he'll burn the ship and not be able to get any cargo, especially foodstuffs. So he is boarding us for a boss fight, and it seems sort of like a random boss fight, and to an extent it is. But Gordo's a fun character. We need some reminders that there are black pirates in the world, because later on that sort of difference between black pirate and blue rogue is something that matters. I didn't equip Aika with her weapon, so I'm a complete idiot again. What we want to do then is sort of focus on one of the mad chefs, and although we don't generally use, Rain of Swords, we'll try using it here. And specifically, we'll Increm Vise before he uses Rain of Swords. Rain of Swords is a tricky move to consider because Aika's moves are lower spirit cost, but tend to be less hard hitting. But at the same time, Rain of Swords tends to be a second round affair, which is a bummer. Later on, that might not necessarily be the case, but for now it certainly is. And these are tricky enemies because they can poison us as well, or the mad chefs can. Digest means that he is going to spit flaming alcohol at us in the next round, which will do a lot of damage, so we need to heal in our next round. And hopefully we'll heal in time. So actually I can't do Rain of Swords because I don't have Sacrum crystals. So the thing we want to do instead then is we'll just normally attack this fellow. But we will have, unless we do somehow have Sacrum crystals. No, we have a Sacri box, but nobody cares about those. We need to use Sacrum, which is 8, which almost brings us sort of back to where we were, which means I want to Spirit Charge again. A little unfortunate, not quite the way I wanted this battle to go, but we'll manage. Gordo is a fight that seems like it should be difficult, but if you just sort of keep a level head, you should be okay. You can see that our sort of elemental defenses are mitigating the damage of Pyrrhus fairly well. I mean, still they're hitting all of us at once, but we are going to get that, we're going to get that health back. Unless Gordo fires off his attack first, which would be a total bummer because it will knock out Fina. But we got our healing spell off just in time, so I feel pretty nice about that. We want to get rid of the chefs too, because if we're not fast enough, it's a problem. Gordo can also use Sacrum, which we don't want, but here he uses Loqua Spray, which is, the North Americanized NTSC censored version. It's just supposed to say liquor, like liquor breath or whatever, from the Japanese, but instead we get Loqua, which is supposed to be some sort of like berry drink, but it's just fucking booze. But we were still sort of in that time frame where that stuff was like, oh, we don't want to have a rating too high, so we have to make sure that we don't have so much alcohol. Like, it was ESRB ratings, I think, were even more of a strange affair during the 90s and the turn of the century than they are now. Now you can get away with a lot, right? But back in the day, ESRB was a very sensitive sort of organization, right? And wow, we didn't get a lot of use of that Sacri box because it broke right there. Usually you can get between like, I don't know, maybe even up to like 4 or 5 charges out of it. I don't know, but they definitely didn't give us that there. But now that the chefs are gone, Gordo's not that hard. He doesn't have any particularly strong defenses, so we can just continue to attack. And in this case, Aika and Fina can just defend. Because, unfortunately, because I didn't equip Aika with her proper weapon, her contributions to the fights right now are just not going to be as strong, even if she has the proper elemental moonstone in her weapon. Battle system in Skies of Arcadia continues to be fairly intuitive, even if you do occasionally need to figure out elemental stuff, but generally it's not that crazy of an affair to guide yourself through this battle system. In fact, it's absolutely not a difficult affair. With just a little bit of forethought, or some tactical choices in the moment, I've never found battles in this game to be unfair, except for perhaps the battle with the Executioner in the Colosseum. And here we get a Cham, so we will definitely sit back and use our items. But we get to talk with Gordo for a little bit. And so this is another example of just Skies of Arcadia being very broad and caricaturish, but then Gordo's going to be a character that is interesting in his own way. And even in this segment, after fighting a crazy man who breathes alcohol at us, we're going to get hints of something a little bit more human, just right in this exchange. So, because Gordo knows who Drachma is. Because everybody knows the story of the sailor chasing the arc whale, Rachnum. And then he says, if I remember correctly, it was to avenge your son, right? And this is, broad moment here, but still, don't talk about it. So we go from the sort of larger-than-life craziness of Gordo to the very real pain that Drachma feels at having old memories dredged up, which can be an issue with Skies of Arcadia. It can be tonally inconsistency at some points. I do like Fina stopping just to take a moment right there. Small character moments like that can be very useful. But Skies of Arcadia can be tonally inconsistent in the sense that, we just went from defeating a giant monster rampaging across a continent to fighting a crazy chef gang in the middle of nowhere, to having some real personal anger at a loss, to all these things. And we might encounter it also in a section coming up. But for now, we've reached Valua airspace. This is where the yellow crystal is, and where the yellow gigas lays in wait. But of course, Drachma right now, distracted, as anyone might be, given the sort of emotion that he keeps bottled up, right? And the Rachnum thread is also this thing, too, that has been sort of put on hold a little bit until now. Drachma has sort of put that whole grudge, not necessarily on hold, but he's been more involved as our sort of ad hoc traveling companion and guardian, as opposed to somebody who's seeking Rachnum. Where's the Cham? There it is. And if I'm correct, Cupel will have transformed into, I think, the Cupel Star. Yes, Cupel Star is after Cupel Sword. It's very cool. And so, also, there was a Sylph Seed. I forget what those do. Probably speed? Yeah, that's what I thought. We've used one of those before on Ica. And I'm going through the menus in a sort of obtuse way, but faster speed for Ica is always good. So we can get off that sort of first round action for her with her special attacks, and then Fina will just have her use Sacrum to get everybody in shape for whatever dangers might lie ahead. And, oh my gosh, I almost forgot it. The Grendel Wing, which we got from fighting Grendel. Awesome. There we go. Party's in good shape. And so we need to go further into the continent, and this is nice for once. We didn't get the Will-O-Wisp on our way here, which is a bummer, so I might do some discoveries off-screen at some point. When we do when it's time for crew stuff, we will definitely do gathering crew as its own like miniature sub segment. But discoveries I only sort of want to show them off as I might encounter them, to reinforce that this is a game that is also about the unknown and finding cool stuff and all of that, which I think is really nice. Elemental affinities coming up, so we're going to have a lot of value in soldiers, which means yellow. And I believe silver is actually strong against yellow, but for now, I'll just sort of switch people back to their defaults, and it looks like I'm going through and actually going to fight the battle, but I just need to get to Fina and get Cupel back to silver, and we'll run away. It should be one enemy, so we should be good to go. And we're near our destination anyway. You can sort of see it as we get close to it. It's this crater in which there are ruins kept. This way? Oh, the enemies are messing up with my navigation. We're looking for a place called the Maw of Tartus. Not Tartarus, Tartus. Which makes me wonder sometimes how much of that is a translation error. But I don't know. You looper. We'll try and see if we can get a physical attack in. Although actually I could have started off with Cutlass Fury and just not put up with any of this bullshit, eh? But Cupel Star hits it. Way to go, Cupel. Feeling pretty good. Alright. And the only thing I will say is that I like... I do continue to like the way that the elements reflect the sort of cultures of the space. So this is all really dark and like shitty as hell, right? But the big thing is, and there's the Maw of Tartus there, is like the lightning flashes, like we can make the contrast, like the darkened skies are like lower city Valua and all the oppressed people, and then the flashes of light of this brilliance, right, are all like the gilded spaces that the aristocracy compose. And when lightning strikes, it's thoughtless and it just hits things and can destroy things. But if applied properly, it could power things and facilitate things, right? So the weather of Valua is this sort of weird metaphor for its political state. Like, what would happen if there was a ruler who wasn't despotic the way Theodora is, or, you know, an enforcer that wasn't as ruthless as Galcian? What sort of lightning could strike in Valua compared to the destructive lightning that sort of tears it apart right now? Or at least perverts it morally. This is the Maw of Tartus. I really like sort of these ruin spaces. We're not really going down into it this time, because it's just a big door and it sort of seems to be doing our job for us of keeping the Gigas locked up. But we need to get the Yellowstone, which is somewhere down there. But it's tricky to figure out what we're doing, but we don't have a lot of time anyway, because there are value in soldiers here to punish anybody who trespasses near the Great Seal. So we got a little fight on our hands, not too difficult, taking out some value in soldiers. It sounds funny, I like getting a chance to fight value in soldiers in this game, because it stresses the fact that Valua is like this nation as opposed to just this amorphous entity represented by the enemies that we face. And it's not as if fighting faceless sort of stormtroopers humanizes Valua, but at least it does make it feel like a continued, like, lived-in space with an army and all these things. That's why the Valuan ships patrolling the sky are important to have too. Skies of Arcadia is good at giving us a world that feels like it has a people. And we'll get through this battle quick enough. Let's actually just attack and maybe the last round use Rain of Swords. But Ica hitting much harder now with the Grendel Wing, which is really nice. Cupel Star, everybody's where they should be. And Drachma, as ever. He only gets so many weapons. They last him for a long time, so the one we got in Rixis is still pretty great. And Vise, I haven't really upgraded his weapon since we first arrived in Horteca, so, I mean, still doing well. Like I said, the game has all the tools there. The battle system has all the tools, so in this case, I don't even need to use special attacks. Not that the SP would be wasted, but it's just like, hey, let's have this moment to breathe a little bit, and we'll just sort of experience what's going on. Maybe Cupel will finish him off. Nice. It's funny too. Cupel takes the star form and then just sort of crashes into him. It's not like Cupel throwing star. It's Cupel star. Rank up, Curia. Not a bad one to have. And so we surrender. How do we open the seal? Valua doesn't care about the yellow crystal right now because it's in Valua and we can't get it, right? But Vise notes that there seems to be a lack of soldiers, and it's because Valua is preparing to attack Nazrad, the capital of Nazar. So even with the moonstones, or the moon crystals being a focus, Valua still is this expansion force. But they've been delayed because a giant arc whale destroyed many of their ships, and so one of the admirals is hunting it down right now. So the whole Rachnum arc is taking its hold again. So this is a good gameplay segment for Drachma, and it has a moment later on that I've been thinking about, and probably gives me a ton to talk about, or at least it gives me a chance to sit and talk about again the value of this game and all kinds of things. I like that we have this moment where we can say, like, because he's made sort of sacrifices for us, even though he hasn't been consistent, but we can still affirm a positive outlook towards people again by saying that we understand and that we will help him. Right? We don't just say, well, it's dangerous, but it's like, he's this thing, Rachnum, rather, is this force that's sort of driven Drachma along to help us, and now that the opportunity is here, it's time for us to aid our friend, because Drachma is our friend at this point, to aid him in his own sort of personal journey. So this segment's cool, but there's some issues with it when we finally get to chasing Rachnum, but we do get a nice slower moment beforehand, if I'm remembering the order of everything correctly. And we also get something that I'll comment on very briefly. So we are going to get right here a change of, like, perspective. So, like, this is, like, first person, and it's removed from the story, so it's like, we don't have this implication often, or perhaps even ever again. I don't remember. But it's like, right now, Vise is talking essentially to the player, or perhaps the implicit notion being that he is speaking to someone else, right? And in my mind, I'm already racing and going, I think I know who he's supposed to be talking to when he's telling this story here, but it is like, without that context and knowing it ahead of time, it's like, man, this moment is very surprising. But it's nice. It's so funny what a difference the pronoun I can make sometimes when a character is talking, particularly if it seems to blend the boundaries between the fourth wall. So we need to find Drachma, and Drachma is on the deck of the ship. And so there's a ton to talk about here. I've given this moment a lot of thought, at least today, judging by some of the events of today, I've given it a lot of thought, and there's a lot of stuff I sort of want to say. So let's at least start off by admitting that, as always, Skies is this broad story, but it does have moments where it is completely fine giving us actual pure character beats. We've sort of had this going on, but this one is particularly strong because we don't get this with Drachma. This is the only time we've gotten it with Drachma thus far. So he's holding on to a box and gives it to Vise. Open it up. Feathers. And this ends up being one of my favorite scenes of the game. And it's got a lot that, like, my mind is stewing right now, just full of things, and I hopefully won't make too much of a fool of myself. So, Drachma's son used to collect feathers. Son was about Vise's age. Drachma, of course, was a fisherman, had a son, learning to be a sailor, and, I mean, we can see the story that's going on here. The son's name was Jack. He was small, but everybody called him Little Jack, right? It seems so simple, but the game sort of earns these moments. Rochnam came, they tried to fight, and Rochnam destroyed the boat. And so here's the moment where I pause, because the image gives me a whole lot on my mind, and and there's so much other things for me to talk about. But my crew and Jack weren't so lucky. Last time I saw Jack, he was clutching some feathers as he fell, like they'd stop him from falling. So I guess we've come to another moment in this playthrough where I sort of sit and pontificate and sort of go over my thoughts. And so let's talk about authenticity. In my writings in the last couple of months, I've struggled with the notion of authenticity in games and how it might be expressed, and I mean it almost in the existential sense, the way that Sartre does, right? So authentic action, authentic character, authenticity in art. To some degree, I've conflated authenticity with honesty, and I don't think that's necessarily like a category mistake, but it is still, I mean, there's a difference. And while Skies is a very honest game, I believe it's also a very authentic one. There's no affectation, there's no pretension. All the game's sort of facticities are laid bare, and, you know, this is expressed in some ways in the general simplicity and, dare I say, elegance of the mechanics and systems. But it's mostly something easily defined in the narrative structure of the game. So here, with Drachma, we have a trope that's, like, super tired and old, and, like, almost as tired and old as Drachma himself is. The root of his bitterness is tied to the loss of a loved one. This is pretty simple writing, and it's so simple that we often sort of publicly deride the times it's used, as though the mere existence of such a narrative trick is like an unforgivable sin, right? We make fun of this trope when it's used. Oh, it's so simple, it's such a cheap way of characterizing things. By all rights, this moment shouldn't work. At least not to the ever deconstructing and judgmental eyes of the modern audience. I think it does, and I think it works because it's honest and authentic. This is an earned pathos. It is pathos not only gained through our time controlling Drachma as an actor, but also time spent with him as a character. And this marked change, this moment of vulnerability, is earned and comes with one of the most visually evocative images in the game, which is really interesting because it's an image that we don't get to see. Yet it is an image that we can picture clear in our minds, as clearly as Drachma might be picturing it in his mind right now. A young boy falling into the impossible, unending sky, clutching feathers in the hopes that they might lift him back up to safety. I've talked at times about meaning making and semiotics in games, and images in games hold a host of possible reference and meanings in our minds that give them power beyond the mere raw emotional value that's generated in the moment. Here, I guess I see, I don't know, it makes me think of a mindset that might not even exist anymore. Jack sort of falls away from Drachma the same way that wonder seems to be falling away from the modern world, right? It's a thought I stress and explicate on time and time again when I write. We are not what we once were, I don't think. We have lost something. Games are not well. Not anymore. Or at least not in a majority sense. We've retained a certain sense of play, particularly on the alt game edge, where games can sometimes seem sort of teasing and even flirtatious, which is a really wonderful sort of engagement with a game, but I still think we've lost a lot. We are very jaded. We cast jaded eyes at nearly everything we are presented with. There's very, very little wonder left. It's gone. It's fallen away. The small fragments of it that we do find and that we cling to, they can't hold us aloft. Tying it back into the feather image, we sort of are plummeting the same way that Jack is. No matter how hard we are clutching on to certain things, and games sort of just limp on. I've said that this game makes me believe in heroes, and it does. But it also reminds me of how few of them we have, and how little joy sometimes we seem to find in games. We sort of dice up games the moment that we see them or engage with them. Each new piece of artwork, each new trailer, each new game when it's released, should be like an animal that we can bond with or examine the splendor of, maybe, right? But in today's culture, we hasten the metaphorical hunt. We capture the creature and we keep it alive and vivisect it in a quest for meaning and strew all the guts about. We ask ourselves, what made the animal special, as we sort of look down on the table where all the little bits of viscera are. We fail to sit back and wonder at the majesty we felt when we saw the creature, and in this case, let's just say that the animal is a game. We so often forget that first moment of contact, of engagement with the thing. We care so much. We care so fucking much about the parts rather than the sum. We intellectualize games far more than we ever feel them. And I'm not suggesting that intellectualizing games is wrong. Some of the best things I've ever read have been strong formal analyses of games. Very long and focused exegesis of text. But we don't always talk about what games make us feel, or how they make us feel, or why it is important that they make us feel, and it is fucking important that they make us feel. It's so hard for me to sort of put my words into thought, so I hope you'll pardon me the indulgence as I think about it. I guess it all comes back to why I want to share this game with you. And it's because I want to share a feeling. I want to share an adventure. Let's go crazy with the bird feather metaphors. I want to show you a rare bird with beautiful feathers. I want to impress, with no small part of terrible presumption upon my part, a truth that I feel you, audience member, listener, may have lost. Or at least I want to reaffirm a truth that I think we are losing sometimes in our pursuit of a more intellectualized, codified understanding of games and game experiences. Games are experiences. Games are feeling. Games are empathy. And I think earlier I mentioned the ESA thing. So, not only are we losing older games like Skies of Arcadia, and we have most assuredly lost games far older than that, of incredible value, but we are losing our emotions sometimes. We're losing the feelings that games generate. We shunt them off to the side and we don't pay attention to them as much. And it's sort of an existential battle on many different fronts. But we need to reclaim a certain hope and optimism. A certain hope and optimism that we've lost. Skepticism is easy. Skepticism is easy, and it's ugly, and sometimes it is rightly earned, but we have become cynical. We have become pessimistic. I've tried so many ways to try and suss out this point. I have written about it. I have ranted about it. I have done so much to try and figure out what is happening. Because something is. And maybe I'm being melodramatic and maybe I'm being emotional, but there are worse things to be than that. At least I'm being honest. At least this moment here, I hope, is authentic. Why do I want to share this game with you? I want to because I hope that by sharing this with you, this experience with you, I can share even one modicum, one atom of the hope that I feel playing this game. And I have ranted long enough, so let's keep going. 'Cause we are in for a little bit of reflection still, but not much more. It seems so simple. The things that Skies of Arcadia gives us. But they are evocative. And we should feel something here. And I am so much more interested in why I'm feeling something here. And how the game makes me feel than whether or not a system is doing X, Y, or Z thing. Fuck that shit. But our moment of reflection doesn't last. Rochnum has come, and we must confront him. So this segment is cool conceptually, because all we have is the silence and then the sounds from the Arc-Whale, which we sort of use as a pseudo sonar to find the creature, and I think I know where to go. But you can still get into random battles here, which is a problem because the battles, and I'm delaying a little bit here, the battles still actually have like battle music, like the dramatic battle music, and I think when I was talking about tonal inconsistency with Skies, it's in small moments. It's not going from Gordo and then going to the drachma scene. Gordo is fun, and then we have enough time to sort of ease into the drachma scene. It's like, it's going from this sort of searching for the beast into a battle with crazy music and colors and effects, and then back into this. But if we head here, we should be right near where Rochnum is. Some people fly around a lot trying to find Rochnum. Really, you just need to go a little bit to the left. I don't think many people realize it. They pretty much place you right in front of it, but you assume that maybe you have to explore more. And here we have Rochnum in the mist, silhouetted. Some really nice composition there. And then it's still insane to me, too, just the sheer size of Rochnum. Because remember, when we first encountered Rochnum, we were in a tiny boat, and now here we're in the Little Jack, which is, like, comparatively to what we had before, so much bigger and so much more powerful, and yet Rochnum still dwarfs us. And here we have the Valuans chasing Rochnum, and I think this is actually the only time, or one of the only, like, for a little bit of this section of the game, one of the only times we see that flagship. And we'll find out whose flagship it is in a moment. So whose ship is it? Somebody else was made an admiral. It is Ramirez's ship, Gaussian's vice captain, former vice captain. And once again, Fina, remembering the name. There's, I mean, no two tosses of a twig, that's not even a term, about it. She knows who Ramirez is. You know? It's this isn't a game that is subtle. But the relationship between Fina, and Ramirez, and then Ramirez himself as a character, and also the relationship he will have with a couple other characters, makes him a very interesting villain. Even though he is still sort of, the rival that we face throughout the game. At the same time, he's also something a little bit more than that. It really becomes clear towards the end of the game a little bit more. And when we get there, I can't wait to talk about why I think Ramirez is important to the space of Skies of Arcadia. Because I think he does more than just act as some sort of character that we are like, oh, Ramirez, we hate him, let's fight him. There's more to it than that. If we want characters that it's like, oh, we hate them, we fight them, we have De Loco or somebody, right? Ramirez is something else. Ramirez is something more. Is more the same way that Gaussian represents something more, some sort of iron-fisted form of perverted power. And Ramirez's backstory isn't even actually told to us fully in this game. It's told to us fully in Skies of Arcadia Legends. So when the time comes, I will explicate on that as well. but some of the implications fascinate me. That's a lot of damage for a subcannon. But this is pretty easy. We attack. We are going to build up to our harpoon cannon. As we move forward in the game, we won't be able to as reliably just fall back on the harpoon cannon or any other special cannon that we have, because enemies will become more robust. So what we want to do is focus, increm, focus. That is a good round, because we are using a complete kit at the start. So we will survive the round no matter what. We will be buffed, and we will be able to use the harpoon cannon. This moment of the game has a lot of momentum to it, to sort of sound silly with a sentence. So this boss fight here, it's not even really a boss fight. It's just an encounter with another ship. It's just to sort of give us a challenge to face as we move into what's coming next. It's giving us a chance to engage in the space again with the Little Jack, and that's important for reasons that will become very clear in a few minutes after we're done with this battle. It's also one of the reasons why we had to move up through the deck of the ship to head to the actual outside deck to talk with Drachma. We had to navigate space inside the Little Jack. We now have to fight using the Little Jack. There is a reason for that. So we will fire the harpoon cannon, and on the off chance that we're in a weak position, we will heal and defend at the end of the turn. But I think we should be okay. I love the various designs of the ships. The Valiant ships feel so just cold and vicious, and the Little Jack feels like something that has actual character to it. Which I suppose is backed up by this notion of having the ship itself have stats that we manage and its own HP pool and things like that. They're sort of treated as their own separate entities, but also as characters, the same way that Rachnum might be its own character as well. So now we can shoot Rachnum with the harpoon cannon. Actually using the harpoon cannon in a way that sort of makes sense, finally. But things are going to sort of change here in a minute. So Ramirez is firing. And now the Little Jack is going up in flames. So there's a decision to be made. Drachma doesn't want to leave. This is his one chance to get Rachnum, but Vise has to tell him to let it go a little bit, you know? You always have another chance. But if he dies now, it doesn't mean anything, is the argument going on. And so this is, as a segment, this is Rachnum's show. This is Drachma's show. This is the clash. And it's sort of not going the way we want. And again, we are going to move through the Little Jack space because this is a dire situation and we need to evacuate, so it is the last time we really engage with the Little Jack. So the game, by giving us time to move through the space twice and using it in battle, is sort of reinforcing our bond to the ship, insofar as we've developed one, before we have to abandon the ship. Rachnum pushing the lifeboat away. And of course we know what's going to happen here. Small smile. Says goodbye. Stays with the ship. He can't let go. And again, not a moment that is groundbreaking, but still a moment that matters. We spent time with Drachma. We spent time with the little Jack. We were opening up to Drachma. I mean, it's all sort of formulaic fare, but it works. And now Ramirez fires on the lifeboats, and our party is scattered to the various winds. Which will make the upcoming segments of the game some of my favorite segments, because we actually have dual perspectives. And Vise isn't just our primary actor in the space. We will control, I believe, Aika as our other controllable character, as our other, I guess, more prominent actor. And so Vise on an island. And actually some decent sound work there with the water and everything. But where the hell is he? This is a neat segment. But it will be a segment that we will go over in the next episode. Aika, Fina, and Drachma have left the party. We do not know where we are. We need to somehow manage. But that will come in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. I love you all. I'm so grateful to be doing this series, and I'm grateful for those of you who are following me sort of as I do this. You know, I rant and ramble, and I don't know how effective a speaker I am at times, but I hope that you are getting something from this. Like I said, I want to share something with you, and I hope that you are getting something. As I said before, I love you very much. Thank you for watching. I'll see you around. Bye.